In this video, we're going to reverse the process. That is, we're going to be looking at, if we're given a percentage, can we find the observation? To do this, we're going to be looking back at our example involving ACT scores. Remember, scores on the ACT are normally distributed, approximately that is, with an average of 20.8 and a standard deviation of 4.8. Now, the steps we're going to take are, first of all, to go ahead and draw our bell curve. This allows us to see if we want an upper or a lower percentage. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and use the z-table to find our z-score. Notice we're reversing the process. Before, we used our z-table to find our percentage. In this case, we're using it to find our z-score because we'll already have our percentage. Third step we're going to do is find our observation based on this. So let's go ahead and look at an example. Our goal is to figure out, if you take the ACT, what score would you have to get to be in the bottom 25% of people? So, first step is we go ahead and we draw our bell curve. Now, I need to pay attention to the fact that I want the bottom 25%. And if I'm doing the bottom 25%, that's below half, so that means my marker will be in the bottom half. Once again, that's because in the center is 50%, so if I want the bottom 25%, that's below the center. The next thing I need to do is shade. Because I want the bottom 25%, I'm going to go ahead and shade the lower values, so it'll be shaded over here. Once again, in the bottom half, because it's the bottom 25%, that's below 50%. And I'm shading left because I want the lowest 25%. Now, this right here is 25%, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to label it as 0.2500. That is the decimal form of 25%, and I'm putting 4 decimal places on there because that's what my z-table gives me. Next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use the z-table to find the z-score. So let me go ahead and paste that in. And now that I've got my table in here, I need to remind myself I'm looking for the lowest 25%. Once again, I'm in the bottom half, so my z-scores are going to be negative. As I look across the table, I'm looking in the center in order to find percentages, because once again, 0.2500 is just the decimal form of 25%. My goal is to find 25%, or 0.2500, somewhere in the center. While I do that, I notice that as I go from the top down, that these numbers are getting bigger in the center, which is good, because 0.0002, way too small. So I'm going to look down, and as I get further and further down here, I notice it's getting closer and closer to 0.25. Once I'm reasonably close to 0.25, like right here is kind of close, I'm going to go ahead and start going into the table. So 0.24, pretty far off, 0.2483, pretty close, 0.2514, and then suddenly I'm over it. My goal is to go ahead and figure out where it's in between. That is, 0.2500 probably is on the table, but I can border in between instead. So, looking across here, 0.2514 is a little bit bigger, and 0.2483 is a little bit smaller. Now, because we're doing approximates, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose whichever one of these two values is actually closer to 0.2500. So my options are 0.2514 and 0.2483. And to figure out which of these is closer, I'm just going to go ahead and subtract off the actual value I want, and then choose the one that has the smaller difference. So this one right here is 0.0014 off, and this one right here is 0.0017 off. I don't really care about the negative in front. All I'm caring about is how far away from the actual it is. Now I can see that this one over here is closer. It's only 0.0014 off, which means when I come back over to my table, that's the value I'm going to go with. So 0.2514 is actually my closer value. Now, my whole goal here is to go ahead and find the z-score that goes with that. That is, I can't find an end tail of 25%, but I can find an end tail of 0.2514. So that z-score is going to be the z-score I use. Now, using this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace this to the top and over, and when I do that, I see negative 0.67, so that'll be the z-score I write down. So what I found in that last step then was that z is equal to negative 0.67. That is, if I'm 0.67 standard deviations below the center, then that lowered end tail will be 0.25 or 25%. Now I have my z-score. The third step I need to do is go ahead and find my observation. Now, in order to do this, we're going to go ahead and only derive the formula once, but remember that my z-score is equal to x minus x bar over s. I want my observation. That is, what I want to do is I want to find this x value right here. To do that, I'm going to do some tricky algebra. I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by s. So that'll be z times s equals x minus x bar. And then I'm going to get x by itself by adding x bar to both sides. So it'll have x bar plus z times s equals x. That is, this is the formula we'll use from now on out anytime that I have a percentage and want to actually find my observation. So in this case, x will be equal to x bar, well, my average score on the ACT is 20.8. And then I'm going to add my z-score, and my z-score in this case is negative 0.67 times my standard deviation, which in this case is 4.8. Which will give me, when I round to those two decimal places, 17.58. So that is, what I just found is that if you're going to be in the bottom 25% of people, you need a score of 17.58 or below. And we're saying specifically or below because we want the lower end tail. So it'll be that division or below. As a reminder, if I want to go ahead and find an observation given a percentage, I draw the bell curve, use the z-table to find the z-score, and then find my observation using x bar plus z times s.